Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to take a look at the Explorers of Ixalan game. This is a Magic the Gathering box that includes a number of decks and a new way to play free-for-all multiplayer involving these fancy tiles that you put together. Let's go ahead and open it up and see what's inside. Alright, we have 4 decks here in a paper sleeve to hold them together. It also looks like we have a package of a lot of tokens. And the 4 decks appear to be based on the different tribes of Ixalan. So we have the dinosaur deck, the merfolk deck, the vampire deck, and the pirates deck, I'm guessing. There's some space for a bunch of this stuff here. Let's go ahead and see what's in here. Looks like we have deck boxes for our different decks, and these appear to be large enough to hold 60 card decks. So that is a plus. We also have a rules guide on how to play this particular variant of Magic the Gathering. And it looks like they also adjust for different numbers of players there. And then, ooh, complete deck lists. That's also nice. We have our punch boards full of tiles that we can punch. So there is instructions on how to store them here, so that is also a plus as well. It says that you can also include spin down life counters, but they are not included. Kind of wish that they did include them, but I suppose that's life sometimes. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at these decks. Here's the dinosaur deck. Seems alright. 3-color dinosaurs. Here's a merfolk deck. There's a surprising number of non-merfolk in a deck that's supposed to be about merfolk, so I kind of find that a little weird, but that's the deck. Here's the vampires deck. Seems like an okay deck. Pretty simple. Finally, what I suspect is the pirates deck. Kind of aggressive. Interesting choice to put an adaptive automaton in there. I guess there's no proper lord for pirates. Take a look at our tokens. These are double-sided, and it looks like you get a lot of them, so perhaps a lot of these decks will be creating tokens. Alright, I'm going to finish punching this out, and I'll play some games with it and let you know what I think. So I played a bit of Explorers of Ixalan, and here are my thoughts. The first thing is that these decks are okay. These are pretty standard when it comes to pre-constructed decks in that they have a high degree of variance. And I think that their synergy isn't that tight, but there are some interesting cards in here that you wouldn't actually find in the Ixalan set, nor in the following set, Rivals of Ixalan, and so they're interesting. I mean, there's some modern age cards and some commander pieces in here that kind of make these decks a little bit more interesting than your standard pre-con deck, but I also think that variance is really high, and so there are lots of 1-ofs or 2-ofs, making the play experience of these not the smoothest. So those are my thoughts when it comes to these decks. They are themed after their relative tribes, and I guess that's fun, but the synergy isn't super high, and so it's not that great. I appreciate that this comes with all of these tokens. I think that really helps. It works for both the decks as well as the tokens that are generated by the tiles that are here. The counters, I'm not that much of a fan of. These +1/+1 counters. I mean, I'm glad that they're here so that you can almost play this straight out of the box without anything else, but these are less than desirable when it comes to marking the number of counters that are on something. The two components that I wish that this product had were, one, some way of tracking life. There is space for life counters right here, but it actually doesn't come with life counters. And so I feel that is really odd. If you create a space, you should have the thing that you're supposed to fit in that space. Otherwise, it feels like there is something that they forgot to put in this box as opposed to something that comes with this box. And so I kind of wish that they included either the life counters or just didn't have this at all. But as a solution, as a right out of the box you can play this, I kind of wish that they had included the spin downs or some other way of tracking life. The other thing that I kind of wish that this box had was, rather than these cardboard token miniatures that you use to track the space that you're occupying, I kind of wish that this had meeples or some other very simple colored figurine that you can use to put on the map. So it's a lot more physical of a presence than these cutouts, which if you just put it on the tiles can sometimes get lost depending on the color that it is. And so I think that something that was more of a 3D marker would have been much more preferable, and that would also remind you as a player that you can put this thing on the map after you have explored. Now, how does the game actually play? Well, I think that this is an interesting addition to the way that you play a multiplayer game in Magic, because it gives you something to do with that random mana you might have left over in a turn, or if you have a really slow start and you're not able to do anything, you actually have something that you can spend your mana on by exploring these tiles. And I do think that it creates an interesting mini game because some of these tiles can be relatively powerful for you to pick tiles such that you get the benefit off of the tile without opening up a more powerful tile for your opponent to potentially explore. And that's where those little chips come into play, because you get to, after you set this up, you get to put a little chip on a spot after you explore adjacent to it, which can help prevent one opponent from getting into it. But because there are 3 opponents that go around before your turn, it's possible that you taking one of these tiles will still open it up for another opponent somewhere else to pick a tile as well. And some of these effects are powerful. Now, that said, these tiles do not work well with every single kind of deck. I found that control decks do not really care about these tiles because they don't really play well into the control deck's way of winning. But I feel like with your standard creature-based decks, these often do have some sort of interesting effect that you are going to be interested in. So I think control and combo type decks are going to find these tiles the least useful, and consequently, I think that if you want to play Explorers of Ixalan, you should definitely be choosing to play with creature-based decks rather than combo or control-based decks, because that is where the fun is going to come when you are flipping things over. Some of them do help accelerate the game, but I think that that's traded off because just the fact that you have to think about which tiles to take and what other opponents might be able to get from them does slow the game down as well. And so I think that there is that trade-off there. But in the late game, if you end up empty-handed, it also gives you something to do with your mana then as well. And so I think that as a casual way to enhance a multiplayer game, I think that this is something that you might want to consider adding to your multiplayer games, especially if you're all playing with creature-based decks. And even other tribes, I think that this will work. And I like some of the quests especially because of all the types of things that you can do. They incentivize you to behave in a certain way. Like this one, the next time you deal combat damage to the player on your right, draw a card. So it sort of incentivizes you to behave in somewhat less typical ways to get a benefit, and that can sometimes accelerate or create more interesting politics to a game. And so I do really enjoy this, and I think it would be a fun addition to your multiplayer games, including Commander and other multiplayer formats. This is a bit complex, So your beginning Magic player, even though that this is casual, will have a hard time at some points understanding some of the cards as well as the board states when you're playing a multiplayer game. But I think for casual Magic players who want a little something else to their multiplayer games, Explorers of Ixalan is a high pick in terms of something to try. If you've played Explorers of Ixalan, let me know what your thoughts were about it in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of these videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.